Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark, and we are in Ruth chapter 4, and we are starting this lesson in verse 4. But before we begin, our theme verse for Lunch with the Lord, Jeremiah 15:16. Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we saw last lesson in verse 3, it says, And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, sells a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. So Boaz now is talking to the nearest kinsman, and he is letting him know that Naomi is selling this parcel of land that belonged to Elimelech, her husband, because she's poor, and her daughter-in-law Ruth is poor, and they just need money to survive and to help them live at least a little bit more comfortably. And we saw last lesson also that it was because she decided to sell this land, she and Ruth decided to sell this land, that it opened up the opportunity for her to be for her and for Ruth to be redeemed and to be provided for. And it was a lesson that we taught that we give up the things of this world that we may gain the treasures of heaven. That we don't have attachments to things in this world, so that we can have our life and our heart and our attachments are on things above, right? That's what Colossians 3:1. If ye then be risen with Christ, what? Seek those things which are above, where Christ sits on the right hand of God. Set your affection where? On things above, not on things on the earth, for you are dead and your life is hid with Christ in God. So as we live our life, as we grow in our walk with God, we need to become less and less attached to the things of this world. Because if we attach ourselves to the things of this world, then we're not opening ourselves up to the treasures of heaven. It doesn't mean we're not saved. It just means that the blessings of God come as we give up our attachments to the things of this world, that the blessings of heaven come to us. And this is what happened with Ruth. It was, if she had held on to that land and said, no, I can't give that land up. It was my husband's, and it's a reminder, and I know I have a box here of trinkets from my husband that remind me of my husband, but I want that land. I remember my husband going out in that land and working hard, and I just have to hold on to it. Well, if she did, then she and Ruth would have remained poor the rest of their lives, and there would have been no redemption possible. So here she's selling this land, and now it opens up the opportunity for her and for Ruth to be redeemed and provided for, and God was going to bless them tremendously if they did it, and they did choose to do it. So now in verse 4 it says, And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, then redeem it. But if you will not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know, for there is no one to redeem it besides you, and I am after you. And the nearest kinsman said, Well, I will redeem it. Well, that's good. I'll redeem it, right? So the nearest kinsman says, well, okay, I'll buy this parcel of land. Now, remember, the nearest kinsman represents the law, and the law is our nearest kinsman. And only seeing the land and how it will benefit himself and his family, he chose to redeem it. The nearest kinsman represents the law, which had first claim over us. The law cares only for itself and its own purity. Its existence and its status in life must not be changed in any way. He was probably looking forward to buying the land from a desperate widow at a cheap price. It was all about himself. The law cares nothing for you, only for its own purity. And that's true with the law of Moses. Is the law some cruel, terrible thing? No, no, no. Remember, the law of Moses is holy, it's pure, and it's righteous. And the thing is that in order to please the law, you have to keep the law perfectly. But because no one can, then the law becomes our kinsman condemner, not our kinsman redeemer. So the law cares nothing about you. It only cares that you keep it. So it only cares for its own purity, not for your purity. It's not trying to reach out to make you pure. The law requires you to be pure. Now we go to verse 5. So he says, so the nearest kinsman says, yeah, okay, I will redeem it then. Now, this is, every time I read this or every time I hear this, I have to laugh because it's like a card game. You're playing in a card game, and here's Boaz, and Boaz is he doesn't just lay out all of his cards face up so that everybody can see what he's got at the end, right? He holds one card back. He has his ace in the hole, right? And he's holding on to this last card, and he's not going to show it to anybody until it's absolutely necessary. So here's Boaz, and he says in verse 5, then said Boaz, the day that you buy the field of the hand of Naomi, here's my ace in the hole, you must also buy it of Ruth, what? Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Okay, so he says here, you must also buy Ruth the Moabitess. You can't just buy the land and say, you can keep the rest. No, no. When you buy the land, you buy Ruth. Now, one commentator that I was studying said that the Hebrew text is wrong and that it should read, the day you buy the field, you also buy Ruth the Moabitess. And it's possibly true that that's the correct interpretation of it. And the reason is because if you go down to verse 10, chapter 4, verse 10, it says, moreover, when Boaz is buying the field, it says here, moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, have I what? Have I purchased? I've purchased her. So when Boaz finally bought the land, Ruth was connected with the land. And when you bought the land, you had to buy Ruth because she and the land were one and the same. All right. So the day that he bought the land, he also bought Ruth the Moabitess. Now, Boaz said that he also bought Ruth to be his wife. He bought her. He didn't just say, by the way, I'm going to buy this land and I'm going to marry Ruth too, as a little side thing. No. When he bought the land, he bought Ruth also. So now, because of her marriage to Mahlon, Ruth was directly connected to this land. The nearest kinsman desired the land. It would add to him. It would benefit him. It was in the promised land. Therefore, it had God's approval. It wasn't like, this land that that Naomi had was in Moab or some other country. No. The land that she was selling was in the promised land. So if it's in the promised land, well, then it has God's blessing on it. It's good land to buy, right? Remember, the law is holy, and it can only accept holy things. But when he realized that Ruth was attached to this land. Then he saw the land as being stained with unholy Gentile uncleanness. So now, even though the land is in the land of Israel, it's in a sense a holy land, right? This plot of land, it's accepted by God. Yet because Ruth is connected with the land, then somehow then he sees the land as being stained and unholy. This Gentile has marred a portion of the holy land, and in his eyes has made it unclean. Therefore, not only will he not allow his own inheritance to be stained, but most definitely will he not join himself in marriage to this Gentile. So this is the approach that this nearest kinsman has. I'll buy the land, but Ruth comes with it. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't buy this land. She's Gentile. She's Moab. And I'm not going to ruin my inheritance by bringing in this Gentile. See, the thing is the whole problem isn't the land. The whole problem is Ruth, because she's a Gentile. All right. The problem here is Ruth. She's she's the problem. Now, Boaz, on the other hand, listen, Boaz saw that the real treasure was not the land, but it was Ruth herself. We do not know if Ruth was beautiful or not, but we do know that she was tremendously virtuous, and her virtue was what brought her honor and respect in the city of Bethlehem. And it seems that Boaz wanted to have Ruth as his wife because of the honor that she would bring to him. Now, you may say, but I've always been taught that Ruth was beautiful, and, Boaz wanted Ruth because of her beauty and everything. Well, we don't know if Ruth was beautiful or not, but Boaz, all that's said about Ruth there's nothing in the book of Ruth that talks about her beauty. It does talk about her virtue. And Boaz wants Ruth because she's a virtuous woman. Was she pretty? My guess is she probably was pretty. But Boaz doesn't mention that. When he talks about Ruth, you are a virtuous woman. The whole city knows you're virtuous. And therefore, for me to be connected with you brings honor and respect for me. So, this is what Boaz was kind of going after, was the honor that Ruth would bring to him for being married to her. Now, we have to look at it in our aspect today. But with God, listen, with God, it is totally different. Totally different. We as humans are directly united with this world, with this land. As Ruth was connected with this parcel of land, so also we as human beings are connected with the earth. You understand? We're connected with the earth. As Ruth was connected with the land, we, as every human being, is connected with this earth because we were made from it. And there is no redeeming quality in us. See, it's just the opposite. The way Boaz looked at Ruth is not the way God looks at us. You have to understand, the way Boaz looked at Ruth is not the way that God looks at us. Let me say that again. And there is no redeeming quality in us. God's not looking down from heaven saying, wow, isn't she wonderful? Wow, she's so virtuous. Boy, Jesus, you know what? I can't wait to marry her. She's going to bring honor and more glory to me, right? Or look at that guy over there. Isn't he wonderful? he's handsome and he's very, very honorable. Boy, I can't wait to get him here to heaven. He's going to bring so much honor to me. It's going to be, I don't know if I can handle it, right? No, Boaz saw that marrying Ruth would bring honor because of the way she was. But that's not the way God looks upon us as human beings, all right? We were born with a sinful nature, and we are condemned to die. But God values us not for what we are or for what we can do for him, but because of his love for us and the price that he paid for us. All right? Remember, God values us not for who we are or what we can do for him, but God values us because of the price he paid for us. That's our value. Our value is in the price he paid for us. Jesus died for us what? While we were yet sinners. Our great value comes because of the price that's paid for us. By grace, he has bestowed upon the human race a great value worth dying for. And this is why the rejection of God's great value and price that he paid can only be met with great punishment. God went to the nth degree to die for us on the cross. And because of that, the rejection of that price, the rejection of that work on the cross can only be met with tremendous punishment. Now, I remember years and years ago, in fact, it was back in the late 1970s, we went, me and some other friends of mine, we went to a Christian event in Pennsylvania, and it was outside, and you had tents and everything. And maybe you know that Jesus 76, Jesus 77, Jesus 78, Jesus 79. We went to 3 or 4 of them. And as we were getting ready to leave after 3 or 4 days being there, camping out, and it was Christian concerts and preachers. It was wonderful. I enjoyed it. We all did, because we had great preachers coming from all over the United States, famous singers coming there, and well-known Joni Eareckson Tada was there, and they had a huge tent with a book tent. But anyways, at the end of the event, we were getting ready to leave, and campers were packing up, and we were going and everything, and my friend's car, it couldn't start. Wouldn't start up. Battery was dead because they were running the electricity and not starting the engine up to recharge the battery. Well, anyways, we went to take the, I looked down and opened up the hood for the battery, and it just needed to be charged. But it was so corroded that I had to have a brush to brush it off. And I said to her, I need a brush so I can brush these connections so that'll connect to the battery and we can start it up. So now we didn't have a regular steel brush, which was proper. She had a hairbrush. And I remember that she said, now this hairbrush probably would cost about, $3 or $4 or something at a store somewhere. But to her, to get that car started out in the middle of a, 1,000-acre field, she would have paid $200 or $300 for a hairbrush. The value of that hairbrush went immediately way up, dealing with the need that was needed for, because it would have helped her out of the situation. So I took the hairbrush and cleaned everything off, and we got it started, and we were fine. But the price that, with our value here, we're nothing. It's what God has paid for us. And God has paid a tremendous price for us. And therefore, because of that, we have great value, not because of who we are. We have great value because of what he's paid for us. And here's Ruth. Ruth, she's a virtuous woman, and Boaz wants to marry her and to be to receive her love, but also the honor and virtue of her life with him. And so he confronts the nearest kinsman, and he says there, you have to marry Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, and raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. And we see in Deuteronomy chapter 25, starting at verse 5, it says, if brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she bears shall succeed in the name of the brother which is dead, that his name shall not be put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother, then let his brother's wife go up unto the gate and unto the elders, and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up unto his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. So this is the passage of scripture that the nearest kinsman is supposed to take the wife of your relative and to raise up children unto the one that's dead, the relative that's dead. All right, we'll continue this more next lesson. We're going to start verse 6 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.